I'm thinking, or I think, I'm sort of figuring out how to split the torso up. I think that was the thing I focused on the most today. Splitting the torso and the pelvis up. Basically, the thing that really bothers me is the torso and then the belly part. What I do is try and find the rib cage, right? The bottom of the rib cage is where this part, kind of the torso part, ends. And then this part is like a free, I mean, you can feel it on yourself. There's like a free where your abs are, right? Like if you look at here, the pelvis starts before the legs. I kind of treat it as like a little bit above the belly button is where the rib cage ends, and a little bit below is where the pelvis begins. So if we look at what I was looking at here, the belly button would be kind of here, and it's kind of in this area between the pelvis. So the pelvis kind of starts here, and then the rib cage kind of goes here, and free floating in between is the belly button, which is, it's not exactly the center of this orb, the belly area, but I'm like looking at something straight on, you know? That's kind of the rib cage. It's hard to draw with a mouse. And then kind of like this, right? Kind of like that. And that gives you the ability to kind of freely rotate things. So, right? The rib cage in this guy, because it's floating within this thing, doesn't have to connect to the pelvis right there. So that's kind of what I was focusing on today. And like you can see it really well here, right? The rib cage is something like this. And then the pelvis is something like this. And in between is that nebulous area where I haven't really got it down yet. But I focused on that today. And yeah, right? If you think of it that way, it helps with getting making the poses look less stiff, I think. Like you can really get this sort of angle along the back, which is really important in a lot, like you can even see it here, right? The rib cage, can you see my cursor? You can, okay. It kind of goes like this, and then around like this, right? It kind of goes around, forward, right? Like I did with this one here, forward, and then it reaches that kind of point at the front where it kind of goes up, out, and then it goes in, right? It goes out, and then in. I've been exaggerating it a little more in today's, but it kind of out and then in, right? Because that's what the ribs do, right? So things like this back curve, especially with the shoulders, how if you've got your shoulders back, you can kind of imagine that it would really accentuate this line. And that really only exists because this center thing, this belly mass, first of all, it's not as big. Like it's not like this, right? It's smaller. Not that small, but it kind of fits within, like it's not going to go beyond the rib cage. Right? If you think about what this thing represents, this is your guts, right? Your guts can't go beyond your rib cage. So it's not going to be that wide, like this lengthwise, we'll say. And in terms of height, I mean, it's a circle. It's just a thing to help with reference. So if you try and draw a perfect circle, perfect sphere, say no matter what angle you're looking at, this is a perfect sphere, it's going to be about this length, right? Because it's got to fit itself within that little gap at the bottom of the rib cage, right? Because it's kind of halfway in between the rib cage and the pelvis, so it's got to fit within there. So that gives you the size of the circle. The pelvis, see how it comes straight down here, and it kind of comes out here with the butt, and it kind of flares out at the hips, or the legs. But basically the pelvis is kind of a little below the belly button, the way I think of it. And then it flares out to about the crotch, like the groin area. So it's like a trapezoid. Kind of like a three-dimensional trapezoidal prism or whatever it's called. So, right, if you look at that, it goes basically about here. And then it's kind of straight back like this, and then straight up here. So it's this shape. Right? That's like a very simple way of looking at it, and then from there you can add the curves, right? Like, yeah, like this one, right? I kind of did this kind of a thing, and then I added curves on top of that. But if you're getting back to what we were talking about, see how this is pretty straight on most of the ones? The pelvis doesn't exactly, like, it doesn't flare out. It follows this line. So it doesn't go out. It goes kind of straight down. I've heard lots of people talking about like the natural rhythm of the body, which would be like head, neck, torso, kind of the belly area and the pelvis, and then legs or thigh, calf, foot. So like, is there one that's kind of standing straight up? Like maybe this one is a better example. Head kind of comes forward a bit, right? We can even look at this pose. Maybe not this one. Right, but the head, neck comes back, comes out of the back of it and heads into the torso, right? Torso goes forward. We've been over that a couple times, right? Goes like this, forward angle. It's like this. And then from there, go back, right? Back through the belly, the pelvis area, kind of this whole thing. So it's kind of zoom, zoom, right? And then the thigh a little forward, right? Little forward, calf comes back. Maybe not like too far back, but it's going back, right? Forward, back, ever so slightly like that, right? And then the foot is forward again. So that's why, like, if you think of somebody jumping, like they'll crouch down, you could think of all of these lines compressing. So if you kind of, you're crouching down like a spring, right? And then you jump up. What I want to get across, mostly to myself, because I'm thinking through this right now. The torso, what I need to focus on is finding that shoulder point, because that's kind of the the extent of it in the back, and then that front line, right? Shoulders would be more like this. Where does it meet in the middle? Kind of, I'll say about the extent of the front would be like here, right in the center, we'll say. Halfway point. This comes in, and then this kind of just falls like that. Right? So center point, and it kind of falls in. Forward to the center point, and then it falls in. Center point would be like here. So we have to go forward. Right? Then fall in. Bigger, So you can maybe sort of think of the torso in two pieces. Right? I don't know. I'm thinking this through myself. But it seems like it's correct, more or less. One's like, some angles are easier to see, I think. And then here's that center line. Yeah, and then that gives you the size of this circle and the position of it, which gives you the angle, depending on what the legs are doing in the pose, gives you the angle of the pelvis. Then from there, right, from there, kind of gives you everything else as well, right? Everything depends on each other. So she's sort of crumpling, right? So this line is going to come forward a bit. This line, it'll be straight down. This one, it would be pretty straight because she's leaning back, right? So it'd be more in the back. So this one, you can see that because she's lying on the floor, you know, you've got torso like this, and then we come in. But because she's lying on the floor, there's no room for this pelvis to go other than up. So this is going to be flatter. This is going to go up. Because this is, like I said, it's a trapezoid, right? That trapezoid is going to be a trapezoid. It's bones. It's not going to reform, and it's not going to go like this. It's going to move as in response to what's, you know, influencing it. Right? I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, so I'll leave it there.